Remember, when you sell your house, you want to net the most money, sell within your time frame, and avoid stress as much as possible. Welcome to part 2 of how to sell a home in Los Angeles. My name is Matias, and I'm your trusted Los Angeles realtor. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In part 1, we spoke about having a clear plan about what happens after you sell. And we spoke about starting with the end in mind. We spoke about whether deciding to sell as is or whether to invest in repairs and renovations prior to the sale. We also talked about crafting a story related to the property and the importance of sharing anything that a potential buyer may find useful when making a decision. We also discussed the importance of making sure you have authority to sell the property and that all documents are in order. We talked about listing price, staging or non-staging, photography, and the importance of planning ahead when it comes to showing the property to the public. Will you be doing private showings, open houses, or will you only be showing it with an accepted offer? Now, before hitting the market, we may want to make a decision about the escrow and the title company we will be working with. This is an important decision, so make sure you seek expert advice. In most circumstances, potential buyers will be walking through the property, so it is advisable to do a safety check before letting people explore. This is particularly important for properties with a lot of deferred maintenance. And now it is time to hit the market. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, so we want to assure that the property makes a great first impression. But as a seller, you just want to focus on the important milestones during the selling process. Within 1 week of going live, we will know if the property was properly priced or not. This is when tracking metrics become very important. Clicks, calls, emails, showing requests, open house guests, ad click-through rate. We want to know and keep track of everything. Now, a word of warning. If we did our job correctly, the first few days may be a bit intense. In an active market, we may be tempted to accept the first offer that comes in. This is a big mistake that a lot of realtors make. When a property stays on the market for 1 day, you must wonder if something better may have come along with a little bit of market exposures. 9 out of 10 times, the answer is yes. If someone really wants a property, they won't go away after a few days. We don't necessarily have to set a deadline for offers. Our decisions must be informed by facts and results, not by feelings. In many cases, deadlines for offers are appropriate, but not always. For the sake of our journey together, let's assume that our property is generating good activity and a few offers have already come in. Now, we've decided to set a deadline for offers 1 week or 10 days after the property went on the market. If we do set a deadline, it is crucial to make sure potential buyers can view and know as much as possible about the property. We don't get any points for going into escrow with someone who doesn't really want to buy the property. Some properties may take a little longer to sell. There are too many factors to discuss in details, but let's talk about 2 other possible scenarios. The property is getting a lot of attention, but no offers are coming in. In this case, we'll keep a close eye on the activity and don't necessarily need to adjust anything. But once activity tapers off, something has to happen. Now, let's assume the property hits the market and it is crickets. What do we do now? Most likely, it means one of the pre-market steps we discussed needs to be adjusted. But of course, we are going to get it right the first time. And we set a deadline for offers and we got multiple offers. Now, before we start the party, I feel like I need to discuss 2 types of offerers we need to be aware of: wholesalers and retraders. Wholesalers put properties under contract and sell the contract for a fee. Retraders offer a price they have no intention of paying and hope to negotiate their way down during the escrow period. You have been warned. In most cases, we can spot them a mile away. I will do another video just on the pitfalls of working with wholesalers and retraders, with specifically these buyer profiles. Once we collect the offers, we must carefully interpret the terms and understand what we are dealing with. Counteroffers may be necessary to level the playing field or to clean up any issues which can turn problematic during the escrow period. Here, there is no substitute for experience. Selecting the right buyer in a multiple offer situation is very important. We must look at both price and terms of the offer. No one likes canceled escrows and back on market. It happens, but the risk can be greatly reduced by making the right decision the first time. Once escrow is opened and the initial deposit is in, now we start working our way through the contractual or offer contingencies, if there are any. Think of it this way. A contingency is a condition someone puts on their offer. In other words, I will buy your house if I can get a loan, or if there are no foundation issues, or if an independent appraiser thinks it is worth as much as I'm paying for it. The most common contingencies are disclosures and documents review, property conditions, so satisfactory inspections, appraisal, financing, and marketable title. But there are other contingencies equally as important based on the type of sale or property. A seller can have contingencies too. The most common is the purchase of a replacement home. In other words, you can buy my house only if I can buy another place to live in. We don't need to get too technical on contingencies, but there is something we should talk about, and that is negotiating credits and repairs. If the offer you accepted has an inspection contingencies, chances are that after the buyer is done with their inspections, their agent will submit a request for repairs, credits, price reduction, or a combination of the three. Negotiating repairs could take up an entire video just by itself. This can be a very emotional process and often the most stressful part of a transaction. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, there's no substitute for experience. There are things you can do as a seller to make sure everything goes smoothly during an inspection. For instance, make sure all utilities are on. If something has been disconnected, make sure you provide a reason why it was disconnected or reconnected prior to the inspection so it can be tested. You don't want the buyer to assume your AC is not working and ask for a $10,000 credit only to find out all you needed was to flip a switch. I think you get the idea. Just remember that the buyer can ask for anything they want on their request for repairs. And unfortunately, some buyer agents measure their worth by asking a lot. The seller, of course, is under no obligation to do anything. But since in most cases keeping the deal together is beneficial for both parties, let's look at our option. Generally speaking, there are 5 possible outcomes or options for this stage of the transaction. The first 3 we are going to look at work independently or can be combined. And they are option 1, the seller consents to the repairs and takes care of them, in most cases before the close of escrow. Option 2, the seller gives the buyer a credit. Now, depending on the amount requested and the buyer's closing cost, how much of a credit can be negotiated, but generally it never exceeds 3% of the purchase price due to lender's restrictions. Did you get that? So if there is a lender involved, the entity giving the buyer the money doesn't want to give them too much money if they get a lot of it back. Now, enter option 3, price reduction. This is a reduction on the purchase price to compensate the buyer for defects with the property. This can be a little or it can be a lot. Let's say we're in escrow on a $5 million home, and during our escrow, a tree falls on the house, crushing through the roof and pulling an oddly shaped skylight into the living room ceiling. Is the deal over? Well, not necessarily. Maybe now the buyer thinks the house is worth $4.5 million because they have to share their breakfast with the squirrels. See what I'm saying? But if the buyer and the sellers can't reach an agreement, there's always the nuclear option. Option 4, the buyer cancels and gets the deposit back. If you're negotiating repairs or credits, chances are the buyer has a contingency, so they can walk away. This may not sound fair to the seller, but this is how most contracts work. But we are not done. We still have option 5, and that is the seller does nothing. No credits, no repairs, and no price reduction. This may not be in the seller's best interest for a few reasons. The first being that the seller will have to disclose to other potential buyers any defects that they have been made aware of, or make the necessary repairs after all. And the second reason is that going back on the market to look for a new buyer may not be that much fun. A note on backup offers. Yes, even the buyer in backup has to know about what happened. In the case of the tree smashing through the living room windows, of course, I'm sure they can figure that out. But option 5 is an option, and the buyer can move forward and take the property as is or cancel. Let's recap. Option 1, repairs. Option 2, credits. Option 3, price reduction. Option 4, buyer cancels. Option 5, the seller does nothing. Of course, you don't have to worry about any of this if you accept a non-contingent offer. There's no negotiating there. Now, let's move on to the appraisal. As a seller, you won't have to worry about dealing directly with the appraiser, but as your agent, there are things I can do to help the process along. Like in many professions, there are some amazing appraisers out there, but there are also a few who may need extra help. And since life is like a box of chocolate and you never know what you get, to help an appraiser along, we should provide a list of upgrades to the property, if there are any, some comparable sales we think justify the value, and we want to make sure those smoke and CO2 detectors are fully charged and in place. If there is a tanked water heater, we also want to make sure it is double strapped. There are other things we may do, but why bore you with it when you should only concern yourself about netting the most money, selling within your time frame, and avoid stress as much as possible. So once the appraisal comes back at or above the contract price, the buyer is on track to take their loan to the finish line. Once that is done, we arrive at the point of no return. That is the removal of all contingencies. Now we have a deal. Wow. We've been through so much together already. By now, we got our city report. By the way, most municipalities in Los Angeles County have some sort of city required report for the transfer of real estate. It's a way for the city to collect a fee in exchange for a piece of paper that says, yes, that's a real house you're selling and not a figment of your imagination. But it's not over yet. The state of California, the county of Los Angeles, and whatever city you are in all have certain requirements related to the transfer of residential real estate. In the business, we call it CC, Certificate of Compliance. It has to do with water-saving fixtures and safety features a home should have, like a gas shut-off valve in case there's an earthquake. Because yes, this is California after all. But honestly, you don't have to worry about any of this because you got me. One last thing. 5 days prior to the close of escrow, or around that time, the buyer does a final verification of property condition to make sure the house is still there and that any agreed upon repairs have been completed. This is not a contingency. The way this should be interpreted is a way for the buyer to make sure that the property is generally in the same conditions as when the offer was accepted. Here is where the fallen tree in the living room would really put a damper on things. But after final verification, it is time to put the champagne on ice. Once the buyer's money is with the title company and escrow releases the file for recording, the sale is recorded with the county recorder's office. Congratulations, we have sold our property. You know, it's been an emotional journey, but it was totally worth it. What more can I say? If you're thinking about selling, call me. But if you're not thinking about selling, we can still be friends if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. And why not help me spread the word? If I don't hear from you sooner, I will see you in the next video. And until next time, explore boldly and live passionately in LA. Bye!